Welcome to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. We are two dads talking sports during nap times. Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode. Welcome back to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. For episode 9, we will discuss all the news surrounding the NFL free agency thus far. So Zach, we have a lot to discuss today, so we might as well just dive right into it. And it is no longer a question what the Bears are doing with their number one pick, because just over the last half hour it broke that Justin Fields was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 2025 sixth rounder that can turn into a fourth rounder in 2025. However, Justin Fields needs to play 51% of the snaps this season for that to turn into the fourth rounder.
It's crazy that it's finally done. There's been talks and drama pretty much all offseason. What's going to happen with Justin Fields? And the answer is finally here. I was really surprised how long the Bears kept on the Fields. You and I already talked about it a little bit, but they definitely mishandled the situation. They waited way too long to trade him. He should have been the first quarterback moved this offseason, in my opinion. He should have been moved before free agency even started, because we all knew that they were going to take Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick. And the fact that my boy, my favorite player in the NFL, Justin Fields, got traded for a 6th round pick. And from everything I see, it sounds like he's not even in competition with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback in Pittsburgh this year. Justin Fields is most likely going to sit. So at the end of the day, Justin Fields got traded for a 6th round pick. And man, that just makes me sick.
It is absolutely crazy, man. And Poles, like I said, he just held on to him way too long. And that overall just diminished his trade value. Like a 6th round pick for Justin Fields just blows my mind. The fact that if the Vikings weren't interested, or they were interested and they weren't able to get him for that type of draft pick, man, it just blows my mind. That just kind of, it just makes me wonder if the Bears really just weren't going to trade with the Vikings of the interdivision.
Yeah, and that's probably what it was, is they didn't want to trade him in the division. But still, I mean, look at teams like the Raiders. Why wouldn't the Raiders make a trade like that?
Yeah,
I mean, even if
sure.
I would have been comfortable giving them a 3 at least. So the fact that he went for a 6th round pick, and Justin Fields is only a cap hit of $2.75 million this season. So he's a very cheap option for whatever team wanted to go and get him. And I don't know. I just feel like the Bears didn't have much leverage after free agency started, because, all those quarterbacks went so fast, and, the Bears are kind of sitting on their hands. And now look what happened. He went to the Steelers for a 6th round pick. But at the end of the day, I do really like this move for Justin Fields. I think this is going to be really good for his career. I think that sitting behind Russell Wilson for an entire season, learning, a new offense, he gets to totally reset his career. So this is a good move for him. He's not going to be pushed into a position where he's going to be forced to start. And another thing about the Steelers is they went out and they hired Arthur Smith, the old Falcons head coach, as their offensive coordinator.
That's right.
And before Arthur Smith got that Falcons job, he was the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. And Arthur Smith, I mean, look what he did with Ryan Tannehill. It's the main reason why he got that job. In the 2 years that Arthur Smith worked with Ryan Tannehill, Tannehill threw 55 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. So I feel like if anyone can really turn Justin Fields' career around, I feel like Arthur Smith is definitely one of those guys that can go out there and do that. So overall, I'm happy and excited for Justin Fields, because I think it's a good fit.
We'll see what he can do in Pittsburgh for the years to come, and best of luck to him. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, moving on to our next topic. So we're going to go over just all the basic signings through all the different divisions. So we'll start with the NFC North and move on through the whole NFC, then touch base on the AFC, talk about just key signings for each team, which guy jumped out to us. But just before we get started, let's start with the Vikings, because there has been some news over the past few days since we last recorded, which was this past Tuesday. So yeah, since then, the Vikings re-signed Brandon Powell to a 1-year deal, wide receiver, kick returner. I really like that signing. I like Powell. It can bring in that experience to the wide receiver room. He can just kind of go in there and be a role player for us. And then they also cut defensive tackle Dean Lowry. They signed wide receiver Trent Sherfield Jr. I was kind of surprised by that move. Just another guy to kind of add depth to that room. And then they went out and re-signed Jonathan Bullard, defensive tackle. They brought him back. They signed a guy from the Raiders,
Yep.
defensive tackle Jerry Tillery, for a 1-year deal, $3.75 million. And then last night they signed Dan Feeney, offensive guard, for 1 year. He'll kind of come back and be more of maybe a depth player, probably not a starter on the offensive line. And then in other big news, they restructured Harrison Smith's contract. So he agreed to restructure. He's going to be playing this year on a 1-year deal for $9 million. I'm not sure if that, because I know he's under contract for next season too, but I'm not 100% sure if we still have him for next season. I think we do. So this could be the last season for Harrison Smith since he's getting up there in his mid-30s.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll see. Just glad to have him back, and he's definitely going to be a Ring of Honor guy when his career's all done.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And it's nice just having him back because seeing him in another jersey would just be kind of upsetting. So having him hold down and he's been playing really well too. Like last year he played, I thought he was still one of the top safeties in the NFL. So and I think
For
he's what,
sure.
35 or 36. So the fact that he's
Yeah.
still playing at that high level, I mean, that's a huge get for the Vikings to be able to keep him around.
In more Viking news, so this was the big news that happened over the past couple days, and that was the Vikings went out and acquired the Texans' number 23 first-round pick for this draft, and also a 7th-round pick in this draft. And they gave up a second this draft and a second next year and a 6th-round pick this year. So the Vikings are definitely putting capital together to potentially make a move up into the draft to go get their quarterback of the future.
Yeah, and how does that make you feel? Obviously, you're a diehard Vikings fan. Does that make you nervous? Does that make you excited? Like how are you feeling about that trade?
Yeah, so right now we're sitting there in the first round with 11 and 23. I don't think they go out there and make the trade unless they're trying to build capital to move up.
Yeah.
It makes me nervous, just as I'm thinking right now, I say the Cardinals at 4, the Patriots at 3 are mostly the most likely 2 teams that we would probably trade with, just
Yep.
because I think Washington's taking the quarterback.
Yep.
And I really think the Patriots are taking the quarterback too. So it's like, well, are we going up there to get the 4th quarterback taken, which could be maybe JJ McCarthy?
Yes.
To me, that's a lot of capital to give up for JJ McCarthy. If it's a guy like, maybe Drake May, I'm a little more excited about that. But this situation just makes me nervous no matter what. I understand that they have identified a guy and they're going for it. So I respect that. But yeah, it definitely makes me nervous because, you know, you just look at our division and I don't see us being the top of our division next year and where we're going to be in the next year's draft. So, it's just hard for me to give up the future picks to move up. But like I said, if you got your guy and you just got to be bold and go get them.
Yeah, and I feel a lot of the same way. If I were a Vikings fan, I'd be super nervous too. I mean, even trading, potentially 3 first-round picks for Drake May, in my opinion, is a little steep.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'd be more excited if you were to get a Drake May than a JJ McCarthy. Still, in my opinion, I don't think, no one's going to agree with this, but I don't think JJ McCarthy should be a first-round quarterback. I think he's
Yeah.
too much of a project. And the fact that the Vikings could potentially trade 2 first-round picks and more to get up to 4 to take JJ McCarthy, I mean, is an absolute
Yeah.
overpay. So I would be definitely nervous. And I'm obviously not just saying this because it's the Vikings. If the Raiders were in the same exact position, I'd be saying the same exact thing. I just think it's too much of an overpay. And if you do trade up 3 first-round picks and you end up getting a guy like Drake May, which is best case scenario, I still think Drake May needs to sit a year. I really do.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
I think he's a project also. I think the only actually my opinion, there's 3 quarterbacks that are ready to play: Caleb, Jaden Daniels, and Penix. But I think
Mm-hmm.
Penix needs a sit a year. And if you let a quarterback sit a year, obviously if you trade 3 first-round picks, Vikings fans are gonna be really anxious to get him on the field because you guys gave up so much. And with your roster, maybe with Sam Darnold out there, maybe you guys aren't winning a lot of games, but I would sit him till at least week 10. No matter what the
Yeah,
record is, sit him at least until week 10. I think sitting a quarterback is kind of a little cheat code. I mean, if you look at the quarterbacks that sat their first year, Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith, Drew Brees sat behind Doug Flutie, Philip Rivers sat behind Drew Brees. I mean, just look at you could look at Jordan Love. Jordan Love sat for 2 years.
yeah,
Now Drake May has way more potential coming out of the draft than Jordan Love did, but because
yeah,
Jordan Love sat for 2 years, I mean, in my opinion, Jordan Love looked like a top 15 quarterback in his first year starting last year. He threw over 4,000 yards and 32 touchdowns, and I don't think his wide receiving core is really that good. So I would love to see. And another example, this is probably the best example because this is actually what happened in Minnesota, was when they took Dante Culpepper in I think that was 99. They took him with the 11th overall pick. So they had him sit behind Randall Cunningham, and Randall Cunningham started the year terribly. I think they were 2-4. Cunningham threw a bunch of interceptions, and even though they had Randy Moss, Chris Carter, and Robert Smith, the Vikings now obviously have Justin Jefferson, um, Jordan Addison, and now Aaron Jones. So really good weapons for a rookie quarterback. But what the Vikings ended up doing in '99 was when they benched Randall Cunningham, they actually went out there and started Jeff George and let Dante Culpepper sit for the entire year. And
yeah.
then you look at what Culpepper did in his first year as a starting quarterback. The year later, he took the Vikings to 11-5 record. He led the NFL in touchdown passes, and he ran for almost 10 more rushing touchdowns, which Drake May has the potential to do.
Hmm.
So I think if you're willing to trade all of that, Vikings fans need to be patient with Drake May. Let him sit for a year, let him cook, take the training wheels off in 2025, and let him just eat with those super nice weapons that the Minnesota Vikings have.
Yeah, I agree too. I think if you take him or JJ, they both would benefit from just sitting there and learning. And
Absolutely.
I just have to think that the Vikes, if I had to make a prediction right now, I think they want Drake May.
Yes, I
So
do too.
Drake May, I think he fits Kevin O'Connell's system more. He has that relationship with Josh McCown.
Yep.
Josh McCown was his high school coach. So he has that connection there. And yeah, I just think that both those guys would benefit from sitting. Don't throw them right in the fire right away.
Yep.
Let
There's
them
no need.
develop. We brought Sam Darnold in. Sam Darnold is very serviceable.
Yes.
Going back and actually watching some of his old games, I forget how well he actually moves in the pocket. And man, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen some games where he just takes off and he takes off for 30 yards, and he has a good arm. Like, I'm not gonna lie, he has a good arm. And who knows, maybe the Vikes can coach him up and he could be something. And maybe like if we do take our quarterback, he could go on and sign a contract for another team and kind of turn his career over here as a more like journeyman quarterback. But yeah, I guess the thing that kind of makes me a little less concerned with not having the draft picks is if we do move up for Drake May, is next year we're going to be towards the top in cap space. So the Vikes can
Yes.
go out there
Yes.
and they can fill in roles with
Yes.
that cap, versus having no cap and putting all your picks in, and then you're relying on those draft picks to kind of carry your roster over when you don't have that cap space. But now they have the cap, they can go out there and sign guys coming off of rookie contracts, maybe guys who need a 1-year prove-it deal. They kind of bridge themselves to their next contract. So I like that. So that kind of helps me not be as concerned, I guess. But yeah, it is a lot of draft picks to give up. And if we're going to Lambeau next year, Green Bay to watch the draft, I'm hoping the fight down first round pick.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is I don't want to think like, if you guys trade for Drake May, Vikings fans shouldn't be excited because Drake May potential, I mean, honestly, his potential is, Justin Herbert or I think he's more of a Josh Allen. So you're gonna, if you let him sit, you let him cook for a year, and then you unleash him in 2025 with those weapons, and then with that cap space, like you said, I think right now they're projected like 150 mil, which is absolutely
Yeah.
insane. But
Yep.
obviously that's going to change once Justin
Yeah.
Jefferson
Yeah,
resigns
they
and
gotta
stuff.
get JJ done. They gotta get
Yep.
Darisaw done. So that'll
Yep.
diminish a little bit, but still,
But
I think they could maybe, kind of have those cap hits go up over time and not just be all in. It's not gonna be like $40 million right off the bat. I don't think for JJ. It probably will go up a little bit every year.
yeah, and I would anticipate even after those, after you lock those guys up, I would still think that the Vikings would have the most free cap going into 2025 and out of the entire league. So, I mean, you can build a really, really nice roster in 2025, but still, man, I mean, I just want to kind of throw this out there. You and I talked about this yesterday.
Yep.
I just like for the listeners, would you rather have Drake May or would you rather have you keep pick 11, you keep pick 23, and obviously you get to keep your next year's first round pick. With pick 11, you could take one of the better defensive players in the draft because those guys are going to fall to you because the
Mhm.
quarterbacks and the receivers and the linemen are going to go pretty heavy in the top 10. So the Vikings could have the pick of their poison with the better or the best defensive player in the draft at 11. You could take Penix at 23 and you're still going to keep your picks next year. So it's just kind of a fun little thing to think about. But either way, I totally give Quezzy his. I really respect what he's doing because losing Kirk Cousins, you got these crazy weapons. They need a franchise quarterback. I like how Quezzy is being aggressive in making these moves. So I definitely give him his props.
For sure. And just to go off of that, one thing that kind of like with that scenario that you gave, I think of is, do we think Penix is going to be there at 23? Like, do the Broncos or the Raiders potentially take them at 12 or 13?
Yep.
And later on in this episode, we're actually going to do a little experiment and do our mock going up to the pick 23 there and see what happens. So,
Yep.
keep on listening. We'll be doing that a little later in the episode.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to that because yeah, I can't wait to see if Penix goes before the Vikings are on the clock at 23.
For sure. For sure. Well, Dak, do you want to dive into any more news on the Raiders here the past few days before we go over all the rest of the teams?
The Raiders really haven't done too much. Today they did re-sign defensive tackle Adam Butler to a 1-year deal. He was our best defensive tackle last year. He had 5 sacks, a 3-down player. So having
Uh-huh.
him obviously play next to Wilkins is really, really nice. And I don't know exactly what we signed him for, but it sounded like it was under 5 mil. So obviously a great contract, team-friendly
Yeah.
contract. So that's really the last kind of moves that we've made, but one that I really like.
Yeah, let's dive right into the NFC North here. So let's get to this. Start off with the Detroit Lions. So I will name one player that I was, really I thought was a really great signing for them. And
Yeah,
man, I really wanted this guy, and that's DJ Reader, defensive tackle. They signed him for a 2-year deal, $27.25 million. So he's gonna go right there in that middle of that defense, and the Lions just add an AD, acronym for absolute dog.
absolute dog. That's exactly what he is. 340 pounds. He's an absolute plug in the middle of that defense. It's really, really hard to run against a guy like that. So, I mean, the Lions really beefed up that D line, and they also really beefed up their secondary. So, I like what they did on the different defensive side of the ball.
I do too. We kind of talked about that in last episode, how that the cornerback position was maybe their weaker point of that defense. And they went on and addressed it by trading for Carlton Davis from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and
Yep.
then signed former Raider Amik Robertson on a 2-year deal. So yeah, definitely improving their team in Detroit.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's still the team to that's still got to obviously be the favorite in for the North because the Lions just look so stacked on paper.
Oh, I agree. I agree. They also went out there and they extended Dan Campbell and their GM too.
Yeah, which is huge.
Definitely. Moving on to the next team, the Green Bay Packers. So, the biggest signing I would have to say, we talked about Josh Jacobs last podcast, but adding Xavier McKinney, safety, on a 4-year, $68 million, I thought that was a really nice signing for them just to shore up the back end of their defense. And then they went back out there and they actually re-signed A.J. Dillon yesterday, I saw.
Yeah, and I honestly I like what the Packers did. This is going to take a lot of pressure off Jordan Love. He probably doesn't have to throw 30 touchdowns next year with Josh Jacobs and AJ Dillon. Talk about late in the fourth quarter, especially in Lambeau when it's cold outside. I definitely wouldn't want to be tackling those two guys. And then, like you said, getting McKinney, probably the best safety on the market. Honestly, didn't think that he was going to go to Green Bay, but that was a great pick for them. They also re-signed their kick returner, Keyshawn Nixon. He was a former Raider, but one of the better kick returners in the entire NFL. So I hate to say it, but with the Josh Jacobs and McKinney signing, man, the Packers so far have had a great offseason.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see if they what they continue to do in the free agency class, and if they, what they do in the draft as well. So
Yep.
moving on to the last team in the division, that's the Chicago Bears. So obviously you talked about the big news today with Justin Fields being traded. But man, they are just making moves, and they have all that cap right now. This is something that, the Vikes could maybe be like next year. But one big shocker to me was, I think it was last night or the night before, and they went out and traded for Keenan Allen, wide receiver from the Chargers, for a 4th-round pick. So that is a very, very nice trade for the
Yeah,
Chicago Bears.
talk about an absolute steal. Obviously, Keenan Allen's getting a little older. I think he's 31 or 32 now. But if you look at the stats that he still puts up, I mean, he only played 13 games last year. He had 108 catches, almost 1,300 yards. So he's still that dude. Looking at Caleb Williams, this might be the best team that a number one overall pick has gone to in a very, very long time. They also went out and signed guys like DeAndre Swift, 3-year, 24 mil. They went out and signed the old Chargers tight end, Gerald Everett, which is going to be a nice 1-2 punch with him and Cole Kmet. But man, and obviously they went out and re-signed Jalen Johnson, who I really wanted the Raiders to go after. I thought he was the best corner on the market. And a very underrated signing that they did. They went out and signed Kevin Byron. He played for the Eagles last year to a 2-year, $15 million deal. And before last year, when he was playing with Tennessee, I mean, he looked like one of the better safeties in the NFL. So I really, really like what the Bears have done this offseason. They still have a ton of cap. They still have 2 picks in the top 10. Obviously, the number one is going to be to go out and get Caleb Williams. But I think the Bears are going to win a lot more games than people are probably anticipating. They got a really, really nice roster.
I'm excited to see that schedule released, and we'll have to go through and predict our divisions and see what teams that we think will finish off at in a future episode. I think that would be a lot of fun to do.
We definitely have to do that. That would be a lot of fun.
So before we move on to the NFC South, is there any other moves you want to talk about real quick in the NFC North?
Just looking at the list, I don't think so. I think we really hit on all of them. Well, the Lions did re-sign guard Graham Glasgow to a
That was a
3-year,
big one.
yep, 20 mil. He's one of the better guards in the league. So just being able to keep one of their own was really big. But obviously, the NFC North, I thought all 4 teams did a hell of a job in free agency so far. So all 4 teams did very, very well.
Yeah, maybe once looked at as like a weaker division. I'm a little biased. I think we have a pretty strong division, actually.
Absolutely.
And I think it just continues to get stronger and stronger. So before we move on to the NFC South, I guess a big one for the Packers, though, they moved on from David Bakhtiari, offensive tackle. He hasn't played for a few seasons, so they've finally pulled the trigger on that and released him.
Yeah, and I thought that was going to happen. Obviously, he's had injury concerns the last handful of seasons. I thought he would have been a perfect fit to the Jets. Obviously, we're going to get to the Jets here in a little bit, but the Jets went a different route and did not sign Bakhtiari. So
for sure. So yeah, moving on to the NFC South. Zach, do you want to go through and talk about these teams, or you kind of go through your guys' for this division?
Yeah, sounds good. I'm going to start off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, they went out and re-signed Mike Evans to a 2-year, 52 mil, 35 guaranteed. Absolute home run. You cannot lose a guy like that. They're keeping Baker. They franchise tagged Antoine Winfield Jr., which was huge. They were able to re-sign Levante David to a 1-year, 10 mil. And they also went out and re-signed Jordan Whitehead to a 2-year, 9 mil. So they didn't go out and make a whole lot of moves, but they kept a lot of guys in-house. And that's exactly what they needed, because I think the Buccaneers, looking at this NFC South division, it's definitely a weaker division. So being able to
Yep.
keep your guys that were going to hit the market is going to be huge for Tampa. And I fully anticipate Tampa, competing for this division.
Yeah, for sure. I would have to, if I had to predict right now, I'd say Tampa. The Saints are always competitive there too in that division. And then the Falcons for sure with the new
Falcons for
signing of Kirk
sure.
Cousins. So we'll see
Yes.
how they mesh down there in Atlanta. But definitely some exciting times for the NFC South, and hopefully a little more, a little stronger of a division. Hopefully it keeps going up. So
Yeah,
yeah, so
absolutely.
moving on to the New Orleans Saints. So yeah, the New Orleans Saints went out and re-signed Honey Badger, and then they went out and stole, or I should say, signed a linebacker, Willie Gay from the Kansas City Chiefs, 1 year,
Yes.
$5 million. So that was a nice signing for them, because that Willie Gay, he's a really good player, and that's a pretty big loss for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, it really is. And the Saints, don't have the most cap, so they haven't been too active. But with this division being weak, I still anticipate, like you just said, those guys being in it at the end of the season.
Definitely. Well, the next team here, they might not be the most competitive in the division right now, and that's the Carolina Panthers, but they have sure gone out there and made a lot of moves so far this free agency.
And I really like what they did. Obviously, they had to overpay for a couple of these guys, but I mean, they got a lot of studs. The Carolina Panthers going forward compared to last season's, looking forward, they definitely have an improved roster for sure.
For sure, adding to the trenches, they went out there and signed Robert Hunt, offensive guard from Miami, a 5-year, $100 million deal. And they went out and added another guard from Damian Lewis, 4-year, $53 million deal. And they keep attacking the trenches. They went out and signed Ashawn Robinson, defensive tackle, for a 3-year deal, $22.5 million.
Dog.
Traded for Deontay Johnson, wide receiver from Pittsburgh.
Love it.
And then the past few days here, former Viking DJ Wanham signed with them for a 2-year, $14.5 million deal. So, best of luck to DJ Wanham. Had an incredible year for the Vikings here, and I look forward to seeing what he can do down in Carolina.
Yeah, Carolina's going to be a lot more competitive this year than they were last year. Obviously, helping Bryce Young out with these two guards that they got. Getting a guy like Deontay Johnson's big. Obviously, they still have Adam Thielen, and it sounds like they're one of the final teams in contention for wide receiver Mike Williams, who we'll get to a little
Wow.
later. But he was recently cut by the Chargers. So if they could go out and get him, I mean, Bryce Young, there's no more excuses. He has a lot of weapons down
Yeah.
there in Carolina.
They're definitely trying their best to build the team around him and give him the right guys to succeed. So we'll see what happens with the Carolina Panthers.
Yes.
Moving on to the Atlanta Falcons. So we already shared the big news previous episode. Kirk Cousins is now the new quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. They also went out and signed Darnell Mooney, formerly from the Bears, wide receiver, for a 3-year, $39 million deal. And then I believe we touched on the Desmond Ridder trade for Rondale Moore the past episode too. Then the other day, they also went out and signed Ray McLeod, who's a wide receiver, to a 2-year, $6 million deal. So they are definitely getting the weapons around Kirk down there.
Yeah, they definitely are. There's Kirk Cousins is going to have so many weapons with Bijan, all those receivers. I thought that Darnell Mooney was a insane overpay with the 3-year, 39 mil. I mean,
Yep.
just looking at his stats last year, I think he only had 30 catches and 1 touchdown. So not
Yeah.
really
Was he
sure why
banged
he.
up for a little bit last year, I felt?
Yeah, I think he was, but even the season before, I think he played 15 games a season before, or almost the full
Okay.
season, and only had 40 catches. So it's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of an overpay, I think, for 39 mil. I mean, to think that he got paid more than Saquon Barkley is kind of insane to me. But obviously, different positions. But yeah, I mean, the Falcons are definitely the favorites in this division. They have pick 8, which is huge for the Vikings. They're obviously not going to go quarterback. And with all their
Mhm.
receivers, I don't think they go receiver anymore at 8. I think they're looking on the defensive side of the ball. So overall, the Falcons are a legit contender this upcoming
No
season.
doubt. No doubt. I do wonder what's going to happen with them, though, because the NFL is looking into them for that, for tampering with Kirk
Tampering, yep.
Cousins there, because, man, they had that contract locked down, set with everything before, like hours once that deadline, or not the deadline, but once the tampering period opened up, they just had him pretty much locked down for what they, all the news came out, $100 million and the whole structure of it. So it's kind of interesting. And I know that the biggest thing is Kirk in his press conference said something about meeting with the athletic trainer. So that's like,
Yeah.
that was a big one, I think. So we'll see what happens. What if, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I know this has happened. I think it was back in 2008 with a couple teams. I want to say it was like the San Francisco 49ers and maybe someone else.
Sure.
But the NFL made those two teams swap picks. What if they made the Vikes
Dude,
and Falcons swap? So the Vikes swapped and got 8 instead of 11. How crazy would that be?
that would be crazy. It would be awesome. And could you imagine how
Yeah.
massive that would be for the Vikings to have pick 8 and pick
Yep.
23, obviously trading up for their franchise quarterback? What it would definitely save them some draft picks
Yeah, and maybe
going
they would
forward.
not have maybe they wouldn't have to give up a future first either for that. You can just give them 8,
And 23
23,
for 4
and
or
then
something.
potentially like a third or a fourth round in the next in 2025 or something like that. So
Yeah, especially if they're only going to 4, I think that would definitely be enough to make that trade happen.
well, moving on to the NFC East. So the first team on our list is the Dallas Cowboys, and they haven't really done a lot so far this free agency. They did go out there and sign Eric Kendricks. He's going back to meet with Mike Zimmer to be in the middle of his defense. So that will be kind of cool to see old EK there down in Dallas.
Yeah, I think and that's a perfect signing because obviously with the new defensive coordinator, Kendricks has been in that system for a long time. He's going to be able to make that transition for the Dallas Cowboys a lot smoother. They went out there and cut Michael Gallup, saved some money there. They got rid of linebacker Vander Bosch, or however you pronounce his name, got rid of him. So definitely cutting some fat over in Dallas, but I thought they were going to be a lot more active. I thought that was a team that should have went out there and got a running back, either Saquon, Josh Jacobs. I really thought Derrick Henry would have been a good fit in Dallas. They kind of been sitting on their hands here, so kind of surprising. I know Dak is up for an extension, and once they extend him, that will definitely clear up some more cap for them this upcoming season. But there's a couple reports that he's got some sexual assault cases pending out there. So I think they're kind of waiting on that contract extension until that's all cleared away. But either way, I think Dallas Cowboys right now are definitely one of the biggest losers in this entire NFL free agency.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see what happens. But yeah, that's some tough allegations there for Dak Prescott. And no, we don't condone any sexual assault on this podcast. So
No, hell no. But but yeah, moving on with the Philadelphia Eagles. Man, for how good the Eagles are, they really went out there and just been dealing since free
they
agency
really have.
started. I mean, they went out there and re-signed their guard Landon Dickerson to a 4-year, 87 mil, one of the better guards in the league. Definitely had to bring him back. Signed Bryce Huff to a 3-year, 51 mil. He's definitely going to help out that defense. The biggest name that they got was Saquon Barkley for a 3-year, 37 mil. I mean, that offense, dude, with Hurts and Jeffrey and Devontae Smith and now Barkley. Good luck stopping that offense, man.
Right.
That's just unbelievable. Went out there and they brought back CJJ, 3-year, 33 mil. He played for the Eagles when they were on that Super Bowl run.
Yep.
Played for the Lions last year, a little banged up, but good safety nonetheless.
Huge trash talker.
Huge trash talker, dude, no doubt.
He loves running his mouth out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, dude, no doubt about it. Re-signed their kicker, Jake Elliott, 4-year, 24 mil, one of the better kickers in the league. This one really bummed me out. We talked about in the last podcast that I really wanted Devin White in
Yep.
Vegas. He signs a 1-year, 7.5 mil, and
What a steal.
what a steal, dude. He is going to be an
Gosh.
absolute beast in that defense. If you look at their roster in general, I mean, how are they not the Super Bowl favorites on offense and
Yeah.
defense, man? That team is just, it's like they're playing Madden over there. They're just getting everybody.
Right. It's absolutely loaded.
Dude, for sure. Another big trade that they went out and did is they got Kenny Pickett, traded a 4th-round pick in exchange for a third. I think that was a pretty decent trade. Obviously he's going to be their backup quarterback. There's no quarterback competition there with Jalen Hurts. So a fresh start for Kenny Pickett, which will be nice. And he's got a ton of weapons there in Philadelphia. And they went out there and signed wide receiver Devontae Parker. So just adding more weapons for Jalen Hurts. But really like what the Eagles are doing. Like I said, they're pretty much just playing Madden out there. They got everybody this offseason.
No doubt, no doubt. And yeah, that was a big trade yesterday for Kenny Pickett to get out of the Pittsburgh there and go back or go to Philadelphia. So it'll
Yes.
be interesting to see what happens with him in the future and if he can just sit there behind Hurts and maybe develop his game a little more. But yeah, I think he's probably going to be a backup quarterback from here on out.
Yep, I do too. No doubt about it. How
So,
about the Washington Commanders? What's going on with those guys?
man, they have been going out and making a lot of moves as well. So they went out and signed tight end Zach Ertz on a 1-year, $5 million deal. They went out and brought in defensive end Dorrance Armstrong on a 3-year, $45 million deal. So definitely replacing some of those guys like Chase Young and Sweat that they traded last year. You know, another solid signing for them was Austin Eckler, running back, formerly from the Los Angeles Chargers. So they're bringing him in there for a 2-year, $11.3 million deal. Another big one is that they traded Sam Howell to Seattle. So
Yes, yes.
you just got to think that with that move, that they are for sure locking themselves at second, and they're for sure going to be taking a quarterback.
Yep. And I mean, a lot of people are in agreement here that they're going to probably take Jaden Daniels. But
Yeah, for sure.
you just look at these moves, with Austin Eckler, and they got a decent receiving core with Scary Terry and except, those guys obviously getting Zach Ertz and stuff. So they're really setting up their rookie quarterback to succeed right away. So I really like what the Washington Commanders have done so far.
Definitely. Me too. Me too. Well, yeah, moving to the New York Giants, Zach, what have the Giants been up to?
So they signed guard John Runyon, old Packer, 3-year, 30 mil, which is huge. I mean, I just feel like the Giants have struggled with their offensive line for so long now that, John Runyon, very good pro, very good guard. I think he's going to fit in really nicely there. Went out and signed Devin Singletary, kind of the surprise running back of last year. Took over
Mm-hmm.
in Houston and played very, very well. So obviously losing a guy like Saquon Barkley hurts him a lot, but Devin Singletary is a very good running back. But the big one here is they traded for Brian Burns from the Carolina Panthers. They gave him a 5-year, $150 million contract. And they only gave up a second this year and a fifth. So I thought that was an absolute steal because Brian Burns
Yeah.
is one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. So really like that move.
I saw something over the past week, after that trade happened, and it sounded like the Rams were trying to get him last year at some point, and they offered a couple first for him. So
That's crazy.
I bet Carolina's kind of, like, man, I wish I just pulled the trigger then, but, you know, they did what they had to do, and at least they got, second round pick here. So I think they'll have 2 seconds right up towards the top. So they, if the loadedness of this class, they could still get 2 solid players there.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I like what the Carolina Panthers did in free agency, but when it comes to trading, obviously the Bryce Young trade and trading Brian Burns and only getting a second round pick, I mean,
I know.
I don't know what they're doing when it comes to trading, but just looking at that, that Giants defensive line, you got Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, they got some real studs there in New York. So really like what they did. And they went out and signed a guy I really wanted the Raiders to bring back, and that was right tackle Jermaine Illuminor for a 2-year, $14 million deal. So the Giants definitely, improved their offensive line, and I think their defense is going to be pretty damn stout this year. So really like what they did.
Well, moving to the NFC West, the first team we're going to talk about is the San Francisco 49ers. So they made some moves here. The biggest move I thought was they traded for defensive tackle out of Houston, Malik Collins, and they only had to give up a 7th round pick for him. I thought that was a crazy, just
Great
absolute
value.
steal,
Yeah.
So, and then they went out and they brought in Devondre Campbell on a 1-year deal, linebacker, played for the Packers, former golfer as well. So I think that's a nice signing to add to their defense as well.
Yep.
And then just to go out there and, bring in some guys like Leonard Floyd, who would play on the edge, and Uter Gross Matos, he's going to play on the edge too. So just kind of shoring up their defense a little more. But other than that, they haven't done too much.
Yeah, and obviously they got one of the better rosters in the entire NFL, so they didn't have to go and spend big money. The Malik Collins, because they lost Armstead in free agency, but being able to plug a guy like Collins right in there, And then you look at a signing like Leonard Floyd, 2-year, 20 mil. I thought that was a really good deal. He had 10.5 sacks last year in Buffalo, so
Mhm.
kind of an underrated signing there. But overall, man, the Niners are still going to be that team to beat in the NFC, I think.
For sure, definitely. Moving to the LA Rams. So the big news yesterday with the LA Rams is Aaron Donald retired. That was a big
Yes.
shock to me. I know he talked about that potentially last season or the year after they won the Super Bowl too. He made the decision yesterday that he's going to step down and for his NFL career. Future Hall of Famer, first ballot.
Yeah, losing a guy like that, I mean, like you said, first ballot, one of the better defensive tackles the game has ever seen. And last year still had 8 sacks, so still a very good player. Um, Absolute massive loss for the Rams.
No doubt. Some nice signings that they've done here. So they re-signed offensive guard Kevin Dotson to a 3-year, $48 million deal. Then they went out and got Jonah Jackson, guard, 3-year, $51 million deal. So trying to shore up the middle there for Matthew Stafford. And then they went out and signed your boy, Jimmy G, to
Yeah,
a 1-year deal. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I mean, he's suspended for the first 2 games of the season because of the PEDs. So, I mean, this is exactly what Jimmy G should be. He's a backup quarterback. The fact that the Raiders actually gave him 76 million or whatever it was last year it is absolutely embarrassing. It's hysterical. But this is where he should be. He should be a backup quarterback, and I think it's a really good spot for him because I think Stafford should. I don't think Stafford really I don't see Stafford getting hurt next year. So
Mhm.
overall, decent signing, good insurance policy in case Stafford does get hurt. But that's exactly where Jimmy G should be as a backup quarterback.
Definitely. Anyone else you want to touch on for the Rams before we move on to the Seattle Seahawks?
Just one underrated signing that they have was safety Cameron Curl, 2-year, $13 million contract. He played for the Redskins last year. Very good safety. I actually thought he was going to get more money than that. He had over
Yeah,
100 tackles last year. So just a really good young player. I thought that was a really good signing for the Rams.
for sure. Yeah, so moving on to Seattle. So Seattle went out and they re-signed Tyler Lockett to 2 years, $30 million. Wow. I'm just reading that here for the first time, and that is a lot of money for Tyler Lockett, I think.
Yeah, I
Uh,
agree.
re-signed tight end Noah Fant to 2 years, 30 or $21 million deal. And then they brought in defensive tackle, or the re-signed defensive tackle Leonard Williams to a 3-year, $64.5 million deal. And then the big acquisition that we talked about coming over from the Washington Commanders is Sam Howell. Sam Howell will sit there behind Geno Smith and kind of provide insurance for him as well. Sam Howell's a guy that he's a pretty good quarterback. Actually, he's not too bad. He's a gamer, I think. So that's something that we can maybe look out for him too, to see what happens with him in Seattle. And then I think today they went in and they had a big linebacker signing. They got Jerome Baker, a 1-year, $7 million deal. So I believe Jerome Baker is coming over from Miami.
Yep.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yep.
he's
You're right.
a pretty stud linebacker too. So that was a nice signing for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, and they lost Bobby Wagner this offseason too. So just kind of being able to plug Jerome Baker in there, super nice. But yeah, I mean, Seattle, in my opinion, didn't do anything too crazy. I thought it was nice that they gave Leonard that 3-year, 64 mil. I still think he's a really good defensive tackle in the league. But like you said about Sam Howell, he led the NFL in passing yards, I think, until like week 10 or 11. So he threw for a lot of yards. I'm pretty sure he threw 21 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. So kind of a
Oh, geez.
gunslinger. Yeah, kind of a
Yeah, definitely.
gunslinger. But overall, definitely a really good backup quarterback, I think.
We'll move into the last team for the NFC West, and that is the Arizona Cardinals. So Arizona Cardinals, I like this signing a lot. They went out and signed cornerback Sean Murphy-Bunting to a 3-year, $17.4 million deal
Mhm.
coming from Tampa Bay. And then they went out and signed a former Raider, Bilal Nichols, to a 3-year, $21 million deal, defensive tackle. They went out and also brought in left tackle Jonah Williams from the Bengals, and they signed him for a 2-year, $30 million deal.
Yeah, overall, I wasn't too impressed with what Arizona has done so far. My favorite signing is definitely that left tackle, Jonah Williams, for the 2-year, 30 mil. With him and Paris Johnson, they took in the first round last year on the opposite side. I think that's two really good tackles. Traded Rondell Moore for Desmond Ritter. I really didn't understand that one. Ritter will obviously be their backup quarterback. There's no quarterback competition in Arizona with Kyler Murray, so just a backup guy. But I guess I didn't really know how much money the Arizona had, but I just thought they were going
Yeah.
to be a little more aggressive in trying to improve this team because they really didn't do too much to help out Kyler Murray, in my opinion.
No, not at all. I think that left tackle signing, if I had to say, him and the Sean Murphy Bunn signing are probably my two favorite signings that they went on and did.
Yep, absolutely, I agree. I think the Bilal Nichols 3-year 21 mil was a little bit of an overpay too.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising as well. So we'll have to see the structure of his contract and see how much of that is guaranteed and all
Ab-
that. So,
Absolutely.
well, yeah, that kind of wraps up the NFC. So, Zach, who do you think, what are a couple teams that just kind of stood out to you the most going over this list and that helped them moving forward?
I think my out of the entire NFC, I think the Chicago Bears. I think they hit a grand slam this offseason. They're going to get Caleb Williams, and they got such a good team around Caleb Williams. As soon as they got Montez Sweat, that defense went to an entirely different level. They put some nice pieces around. Um, I mean, with they're going to have that ninth pick in the draft. They could go out and get a defensive end or something opposite of Montez Sweat. I fully anticipate, even though Caleb Williams will be a rookie, I fully anticipate the Chicago Bears being a playoff team this upcoming season.
Okay.
But how about you? What do you say for the NFC?
I do like what the Vikings did, but I'm not going to pick them.
Sure, sure.
I'm going to say the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they just continue
Yeah,
reloading to that roster. And the big signing with Saquon Barkley and then bringing in Devin White and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Think they're just reloading their roster. I'm really impressed, and I would expect them to be better than they were this past season.
yeah. It's definitely hard not to pick the Eagles. That team on paper, they have the best roster in the NFL. I think my biggest loser is the Dallas Cowboys. Especially with Jerry Jones coming out and saying that he was going to be all in this offseason. I really thought
Yeah,
that they were going to go out and really improve this roster. Get a receiver opposite of CeeDee Lamb, or get a legit number one running back because they lost guys like Tony Pollard. So, and they really haven't done anything. So, really, really
yeah.
disappointed with what the Cowboys did.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that one too. What they've done so far has been pretty underwhelming. So,
Absolutely.
well, moving into the AFC. So we'll start right in the AFC North. So the first team on the list, the Baltimore Ravens, and they went out and they signed a guy that we just know is an absolute dog, and that is Derrick Henry, running back, 2-year deal for $16 million. So what a great signing there to add to that run game in Baltimore. Man, him and Lamar Jackson in that backfield is going to be pretty special.
Yeah, what an absolute perfect fit. I mean, I've seen a lot of things online that people are saying Derrick Henry's kind of washed up, but I don't see that at all. I mean, he's still at over 1,000 yards last year, over a 4 average and double-digit touchdowns. So, absolute massive signing for the Ravens. I think the running back room was one of the biggest weaknesses on this team heading into the offseason. So, getting a
Yeah,
guy like Derrick Henry was massive.
for sure. For sure. Well, moving to the Cleveland Browns. So earlier in the month, the Cleveland Browns went out and traded for Jerry Jeudy from the Broncos in exchange for a 2024 fifth round and sixth round picks. So I thought that was a nice trade for them to add to their roster. He'll pair up nicely with Amari Cooper there. And then they, other than that, they haven't been haven't made too many moves. They did bring back Zadarius Smith on a 2-year, $23.5 million deal. So he found himself a little home. I wonder if this deal will be kind of maybe what's it for him, because I think he's getting up there in age. He might be like 32, 33. So I wonder if this will be his final destination before he retires.
Yeah, that would be my guess for sure. And yeah, the Cleveland Browns, I mean, you got to compete with, the Ravens in your division, the Bengals in your division, the Steelers are still going to be, right there. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record. So I thought the Browns were going to do a little more in free agency. They signed quarterback Jameis Winston 1 year, 8.7 mil, backup quarterback to Deshaun Watson. But yeah, just overall kind of disappointed in what they've done so far.
Well, moving into the next team, that is the Cincinnati Bengals. So they went out and they re-signed Cody Ford, and then they brought in running back Zach Moss, and a big one that they did is they traded Joe Mixon to the Houston Texans. That was a huge move that they made. And then they also, a nice signing here, they brought in defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins on a 2-year, $26 million deal. And then they have T. Higgins franchise tagged as well. So we'll see what happens with T. Higgins. I know he came out this past week and said that he would like to be traded. So we'll see where he ends up.
Yeah, and that's the big thing with the Cincinnati Bengals. I would anticipate them trading T. Higgins. They're obviously guys like Jamar Chase are still up for huge contract extensions. I don't think they're going to give two receivers $100 million. So I think before the season starts, T. Higgins will be on a different team, and they should get a nice haul. So if they do end up trading T, I think it would be before the draft or during the draft. So I anticipate, the Bengals getting a nice haul there. But overall, nothing too crazy when it comes to free agency. I really did like the Sheldon Rankins 2-year, $26 million. I thought that was a pretty good value for a top 10 defensive tackle in the NFL, in my opinion. So overall, Cincinnati Bengals still one of those teams as long as Joe Burrow can stay healthy. But I really like what they did.
For sure. Well, moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, as we all know, the Pittsburgh Steelers went out and just traded for Justin Fields today. And before that, they were out and signed Russell Wilson to a 1-year, $1.2 million deal. He's getting, a lot more money coming over from the Denver Broncos for his next 2 years. But the biggest one to me is that they went out there and they brought in Patrick Queen on a 3-year, $41 million deal. But I think we did talk about that last episode, and I know he was one of your guys that you're hoping the Raiders were going to bring in. And, man, that's two guys now, Zach. Justin Fields and Patrick Queen that the Steelers are just kind of ripping from the Raiders.
Dude, I love what the Steelers have done this offseason. Getting a guy like Russell Wilson for $1.2 million and a guy that threw over 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. I mean, Russell Wilson had a good year last year. A lot of people kind of rip on him, especially in the media, but still a serviceable quarterback, especially with, 1.2 mil next season. Patrick Queen is a top 5 linebacker to me. So the Pittsburgh Steelers going out and getting him, got an absolute dog in the middle of that field now. So I love that. And then you get Justin Fields for a 6th-round pick. I mean, going from Kenny Pickett, I think they had Mitchell Trubisky last season, to Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I mean, I love what the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing, man. Mike Tomlin's out there hitting home runs, so I love it.
For sure. Well, moving on to the AFC South. Zach, tell us what's going on there down in Houston.
So another team, kind of like the Chicago Bears, I am obsessed with their offseason so far. Went out there and re-signed Dallas Schultz to a 3-year, $36 million. Big part of that offense. One of the most underrated tight ends in the NFL. Really like that signing. Went out there and signed a guy like Jeff Okudah, which, coming out of college at Ohio State, I mean, I thought he was going to be the next Jalen Ramsey. He's definitely been kind of a disappointment. I was so high on him.
Yeah, you were in love with him, man.
Yeah, I think he went 3rd overall. But if you look what Derek Stingley, Derek Stingley had his first 2 years in the NFL were kind of down. But then they got DeMeco Ryans, and Derek Stingley played like an all-pro corner. So I'm kind of hoping that same transition will happen with Jeff Okudah. They went out there and traded for Joe Mixon for a 7th-round pick. I think Joe Mixon is a better running back than Devin Singletary. So obviously an upgrade there. And then they went out and got, Danielle Hunter, the 2-year, $49 million, top 3 free agency in the entire class. He gets to play opposite of Will Anderson. The Texans got a young stud of a team, and they definitely got even better this offseason. So I absolutely love what they have done.
Yeah, I absolutely love what they've done too. So they're a fun team to root for too. So I'm glad Hunter went down there, and he's not going to be wearing number 99. He's going to be wearing number 55. So he didn't want to take 99 because that was previously worn by legend JJ Watt. So
I love it.
He respected that number. He's going to be in a new number next year. So Jeff Okudah, I really like that signing, and I think DeMeco can really help him kind of maybe progress a little more in his young career here and maybe get him back on the right track.
Yeah, I think so too. And Jeff Okudah is still only 25 years old, so still very young.
For sure.
But if Jeff Okudah can, if his potential can break a little bit, and he can play into that, when he was drafted 3rd overall, if he could play opposite of, Derek Stingley, I mean, you got some stud corners for the next, 5 to 8 years. So I love it.
No doubt. Moving on to the next team, the Indianapolis Colts. So the Indianapolis Colts went out and they brought back Michael Pittman Jr. That was a nice re-signing for them. A 3-year, $71.5 million deal. Michael Pittman Jr. as a wide receiver. They also went out and re-signed linebacker Zaire Franklin on a 3-year, $31 million deal. And man, I think he had just a tremendous year last year. I wanted to say
Yeah.
he was maybe up towards the top of maybe having the most tackles in the league for linebackers. And
Yeah, I
then
think you're right.
they re-signed defensive tackle Grover Stewart to a 3-year, $39 million deal, and then brought back cornerback Kenny Moore to a 3-year, $30 million deal. So definitely keeping those guys home and not
Yep.
letting them leave Indy. And yeah, they're just continuing to build that roster around Anthony Richardson Jr. So I'm excited to see what the Colts could do. I'm excited to see what Richardson Jr. could do on a healthy season, hopefully.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I think they brought back the guys that they needed to bring back. Kenny Moore was a big one. Obviously, Michael Pittman Jr. was a big one. So overall, the Colts, kept a lot of their guys and guys they couldn't let go. So really, really like what the Colts did.
Yeah.
But moving
And
on,
hold on real quick, just to fix that.
yeah, go ahead.
Anthony Richardson, I don't know why I was calling him Anthony Richardson Jr., but he's just Anthony Richardson. So
Anthony Richardson. It's all good. We're going through a lot of names here, so.
yeah.
But yeah, just moving on to the Tennessee Titans, a team that was a lot more aggressive than I anticipated. I mean, they went out and got a ton of good guys. They signed Tony Pollard to a 3-year, 24 mil. Losing Derrick Henry was big, but I think Tony Pollard's got a lot of potential there. Signed center Lloyd Cushenberry from the Denver Broncos, very underrated center. So he's going to be a plug and play guy at center. Went out there and signed Kenneth Murray Jr. to a 2-year, 15.5 mil. I really like that signing. Obviously, their big one, they went out and signed Calvin Ridley to a 4-year, $92 million deal.
Dude, he got paid. Jeez.
He got paid, and I really don't understand it. I think,
Yeah.
92 mil for Calvin Ridley is an overpay. But the one thing that's nice about this, the Tennessee Titans have pick number 7, so it kind of frees them up a little bit if they want to, upgrade that offensive line. They don't have to go receiver at 7 now.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely an overpay, but a position that they really needed. So
I saw this other day, and I didn't realize this, but Calvin Ridley Jr. from Alabama, I knew that. But did he play with Amari Cooper? Because they're both 29 years old, and I swear that Amari Cooper was in the league a couple of years before he was.
I think you're right. I think Amari came to the league when he was super young. I think Amari was just turning 21. I
Okay.
don't think they play together. I really don't. I think you're right. Not 100% on it, but I think you're right.
Okay. Yeah, just how he's 29 and Amari Cooper's 29 too. It's just kind of like, what the heck happened there? But
Yeah.
so, well, moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Jaguars went out and they franchise tagged Josh Allen. Josh Allen's an edge rusher for them. He's not the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. And they've re-signed former Viking offensive guard that we traded last season, and that's Ezra Cleveland, to a 3-year, $28.5 million deal. So nice signing there for Ezra, and he found himself a home there down in Jacksonville. They added Mitch Morse, offensive center, to the offensive line, 2-year, $10.5 million deal. They brought in one wide receiver, Gabe Davis, formerly from the Buffalo Bills, Darnell Savage, safety from the Green Bay Packers, and then the big one, man, bringing in Eric Armstead, defensive tackle, on a 3-year, $51 million deal. So I'm liking what they're doing there in Jacksonville, and hopefully we'll see what Trevor Lawrence can continue to do for them.
Yeah, this was a team that, actually they were a lot more aggressive than I anticipated, kind of like the Tennessee Titans. But, going out there and getting a guy like Gabe Davis is a nice pickup at wide receiver. Not overpaying for a guy like Calvin Ridley was super smart, especially with, this wide receiver draft class being as deep as it is. So the Jaguars are building a hell of a team down there. So I really like what they're doing.
Definitely. Well, yeah, moving on to the AFC East. So, Zach, what is going on over there in the Buffalo area?
So the Buffalo Bills, the biggest thing that they did was re-sign tackle Dion Dawkins to a 3-year, $60.5 million. Dion Dawkins is definitely one of the better tackles in the league, so they couldn't let a guy like that go. Got to keep Josh Allen upright. They signed cornerback Cam Lewis to a 2-year, $4 million. And a guy that you really wanted in Minnesota, and I thought would have been a perfect fit, they signed wide receiver Curtis Samuel, 3-year, $30 million. So they get the speedster. Pretty sure I brought this up, but he ran a 4.31 in the combine. So definitely a guy that could stretch the field in Buffalo.
Yeah, for sure. That's probably the big signing of Dion Dawkins, getting him back in Buffalo, or just keeping him there. And then, yeah, that Curtis Samuel signing, I'm excited to see what he can do there with Josh Allen in that offense.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, moving on to the Miami Dolphins, and man, I feel bad for a lot of Dolphins fans because, they have made a lot of nice moves here, but they have lost a lot of great players from that team as well.
Yeah, especially on the defensive side.
For sure. They brought in Shaq Barrett, defensive end or edge rusher from Tampa Bay. I like that signing a lot. Brought in former Bills safety Jordan Poyer on a 1-year deal. Cornerback Kendall Fuller to a 2-year, $16.5 million deal. I believe Kendall Fuller was out in Washington. And then brought in Jordan Brooks, linebacker, on a 3-year, $30 million deal. And then went out and signed offensive center Aaron Brewer to 3 years, $24 million deal. So they lost some guys, but they also went back out there and kind of reloaded to their roster.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. Not really sure what their cap situation was going into free agency. I thought they would do a little more, especially, to retain some of their guys. I still cannot believe that Christian Wilkins was not franchise tagged or anything. They just let a guy like that walk out of the building. Still blows my mind. Glad he's a Raider now, but yeah, definitely a lot of question marks down there in Miami.
For sure.
But yeah, moving on to the New York Jets. Actually have made some really nice moves. They went out and signed guard John Simpson, 2-year, 18 mil. I think is a really underrated guard. Obviously, the main thing in New York is you got to keep Aaron Rodgers upright. So I like that signing. They traded for Morgan Moses. Good trade. Is he going to play right tackle for him? We'll see what happens. He definitely has the potential, but they still also have that 10th pick in the draft, so they could, use that on an offensive lineman. The big signing that they got was they signed left tackle Tyron Smith to a 1-year up to $20 million contract. When he's healthy, he's one of, if not, the better left tackle in the entire NFL. So huge get for the New York Jets.
For sure. And that's a huge loss for the Dallas Cowboys there, letting Tyron Smith go or having him sign with the New York Jets. So he's been injured a lot here over the last 2 or 3 seasons, I believe. So hopefully he can stay healthy there and he'll protect Aaron Rodgers on that blind side of his. So he's definitely a guy, we don't call him an AD, we call him an AB, and that's an absolute beast. So he's an absolute beast of a human being. So that's it'll be cool to see what he does there for the Jets.
Yeah, great pickup for the Jets. But moving on to the New England Patriots. They franchise tagged Kyle Duggar. Just overall, it wasn't. They really haven't done anything too crazy. I think the big one was they re-signed their tackle Michael Amiwanu, if that's how you say his name. I I don't know where he was in the top 50 when we went through that list, but he had to have been up there because he's a really underrated left tackle. They were able to keep him for a 3-year, 57 mil. That last name is, man, I don't never want to try to pronounce
I'm glad that
again,
you had to say that one, not me.
Oh man, that one, I don't even want to look at that last name.
I want to say it's Owenu.
Owenu? Okay, that looks
Owenu.
right.
The N might be silent there.
Yeah, we'll go with that. I like
Little
that.
phonics lesson 101.
But they went out there and re-signed their wide receiver Kendrick Bourne to a 3-year, 33 mil. Re-signed their tight end Hunter Henry, 3-year, 27 mil. So keeping a lot of guys of their own. They did go out and get quarterback Jacoby Brissett, which is kind of interesting. They signed him to a 1-year, 8 mil. Now, does that free up them from not selecting a quarterback at 8 and getting a big haul, or are they going to take a guy like Drake May at 3 and let him sit behind Jacoby Brissett for a year or so? So we'll see what happens there. But I thought, getting a guy like Jacoby Brissett was a good pickup, bringing him back to New England.
Yeah, and I think that if New England was going to trade out a 3, say, to the Vikings, it would be smart for them because they do have a lot of holes in that roster that they need to fill.
Yeah.
And they need to stockpile picks. So I kind of worry about a quarterback going there and maybe being pushed right into the fire right away, so that Jacoby Brissett will be there. I would say he's going to be the starter next season. But man, if say Jaden Daniels didn't go to number 2, you went to number 3 to the Patriots, I would be worried for that because I don't think they're set up for success. And we might see some, what's happened to these other quarterbacks where they kind of are thrown in the ringer like that and they just do not pan out. So I kind of worry about that, whoever ends up there. So, maybe they do trade out of that number 3 pick. I know DJ Daniel Jeremiah, you sent me that yesterday, was saying that he would actually be more surprised if they did trade and not take their quarterback versus like
Yeah.
a team like Washington, which I thought was pretty surprising.
Yeah, very surprising. I mean, obviously they got more, inside information than I do, but I just don't see Washington trading out. I think a quarterback like Jay Daniels is sitting there. He could be our franchise guy. In my opinion, he's far above like a Drake May or a Penix or a JJ McCarthy. So I think that they stay put. Now, if I were the New England Patriots, I would accept the trade back with the Minnesota Vikings. I would take pick 11. I would take pick 23. I would try to get another first round pick from you guys. You guys can take the quarterback, and we're just going to slowly rebuild New England. So that's what I would do if I were them.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here. We'll know here within the next 6 weeks, and I would imagine that would happen before the draft. So
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think if a trade does happen, a trade should happen before the draft. So,
definitely.
but but yeah, moving on here to the AFC West, my division. I'm going to start off with the Las Vegas Raiders. Overall, not as active as I thought they would be. They did resign, like I said, center Andre James to a 3-year, 24 mil. Thought that was a very team-friendly contract. Liked that a lot. Signed quarterback Gardner Minshew, 2-year, 25 mil. I'm still him and Han on that. Not really sure how I feel. Like I said, I like that more than Jimmy G last year at 76 mil.
Yeah.
So I'm not too pissed at it, but not super excited about it either. Um, Signed tight end Harrison Bryant to a 1-year, 3.25 mil. I like this pickup. We lost Austin Hooper in free agency. So a guy that's going to be able to back up Michael Mayer. Nothing too crazy, but he's a really good pass blocking and run blocking tight end. So I like that. We re-signed running back Amir Abdullah, really good third down back, really good receiver out of the backfield. Definitely like that re-sign. And like I said earlier today, we re-signed defensive tackle Adam Butler to that 1-year deal, our best D-tackle last year. And then obviously the big one, home run, grand slam. I still can't believe it happened. We got Christian Wilkins, 4-year, 110 mil. Um, Over the moon, excited about that, putting him next to Max Crosby. So overall, I do like what the Raiders have been doing. I'm just disappointed we lost Josh Jacobs, and I thought we were going to be a little more aggressive, but overall, I'm not too mad at it.
Yeah. Do you think, are the Raiders, because still had a pretty solid cap number here of available here. So
Yeah, yep.
what are some guys, like, do you have a few guys off the top of your head you can think of that you'd maybe like them to kind of add to the roster that are still available?
So what I've been seeing now, take this with a grain of salt, but what I've been seeing is that the Raiders are looking for a trade. Now they have enough cap, so they're looking to get like a big name corner, is what I've been hearing. Obviously, L'Jarius Sneed from the Chiefs. I highly doubt that the Chiefs would be comfortable trading him within that division.
Mm-hmm.
But another name that I've been hearing that the Raiders could be trading for is Packers cornerback Jair Alexander.
Oh, wow.
So they have the cap for him. Our number one need, in my opinion, is probably corner now. We need a number one corner, so it's definitely a need. And like you said, we have the cap to make these moves. It's just
Mm-hmm.
how aggressive are we going to be to actually make this happen? So
Yeah.
I think the Raiders will definitely, when it's all said and done, I still anticipate a lot of moves happening. Even in the draft, I still anticipate either trade ups or trade downs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to get a couple names, and I think we're still going to get a couple big name guys. So the Raiders, in my opinion, are not anywhere close to being done in free agency.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll just see what happens and keep tuning into our episodes to find out more.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, it's like you just said, the Kansas City Chiefs went on franchise tag L'Jarius Sneed, cornerback. Was probably one of the better cornerbacks here in the NFL this past season. And then they re-signed Drew Tranquil. The big one, they re-signed Chris Jones, keeping him there in Kansas City to a 5-year, $158 million guaranteed. Brought in former tight end Irv Smith Jr. to a 1-year deal. So that's kind of a nice little signing for them. But man, the big one here over the past few days, they went out and they're bringing in wide receiver Hollywood Brown, also known as Marquise Brown from the Arizona Cardinals. So he is going to be a weapon there for Patrick Mahomes, and he's definitely a guy that can go down the field and take the defense or the top off of the defense.
Yeah. I was obviously super bummed when I saw that he went there. It's exactly what the that Kansas City offense needs. They need that deep ball threat. In our first mock draft, we had Xavier Worthy going there with that 4.21 speed. Hollywood Brown plugs right into that Tyreek Hill role. He's going to be catching a lot of slants, a lot of quick hitters, and
Mhm.
obviously he's going to be running a ton of deep routes. So obviously Patrick Mahomes is super excited with that. I'm really bummed about it. The only thing with Hollywood Brown, and he's only played a full season once his entire career, so we'll see if he can stay healthy. But if he can stay healthy, talk about an absolute perfect fit in that offense.
Yeah, that's a big time signing for him. So, well, moving on
Yeah.
to the Denver Broncos. So Denver Broncos have been pretty quiet this free agency so far. The big one, they released Russell Wilson, and yeah, other than that, they haven't really done too much, man. I'm looking at this list and it's kind of underwhelming, almost similar to what the Cowboys was. So, the big one, I guess they signed safety Brandon Jones to a 3-year, $20 million deal. And then they brought in defensive tackle Malcolm Roach to a 2-year, $8 million deal. So I think those are the biggest two on there. And then, they re-signed their punter or safety PJ Locke, 2-year deal, $7 million. So they haven't done too much. What do you think so far about the Broncos free agency? You have to be pretty happy to see that.
Yeah, they are by far in the AFC my biggest losers. I mean, they don't have Russell Wilson. They got to pay him a ton of money next year. They haven't done anything in free agency because they're pretty much strapped for cash.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're kind of panicking when it comes to quarterback. Like, who's their quarterback going to be next year?
Yeah.
They don't. Are they going to reach on a guy like a Bo Nix? Are they
Yep.
going to take Michael Penix at 12? From everything I'm seeing, it sounds like they're not even willing to trade up because this roster has so many holes that they're not really in the position to be trading up and mortgaging the future to get up and get a franchise quarterback. So
Yeah.
they're kind of just stuck in the mud right now. I don't know what they're going to do. Obviously, I love it. They're going to be the bottom feeders of the AFC West for a couple years. So yeah, I love it, man.
Yeah. Sean Payton, man. My thoughts on him. So couldn't
Yeah,
be
couldn't
happier
be
to
happier.
see the news
Exactly.
there for Denver. So yeah, moving on to the LA Chargers. So LA Chargers they've made some decent moves too. They brought in running back Gus Edwards, 2 years, $6.5 million deal, just a depth guy. I think he'll probably rotate there at the running back position. I would imagine that they would probably go out there and maybe sign someone or look to the draft, add a running back in day 2, day 3, maybe. Then they brought in two tight ends, so Hayden Hurst and then tight end Will Dissly. So I was kind of a little surprised at the dollar amount that Will Dissly got. He got 3 years, $14 million. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Chargers. And then they actually signed a former Vikings linebacker Troy Dye. So that just happened over the past day. So Dye is no longer a Viking, and he'll be in that Chargers uniform. So, and then the biggest news we talked about earlier, and that was trading Keenan Allen to the Chicago Bears for a 4th-round draft pick in return.
Yeah.
So, what's your thoughts on what the Chargers have done so far?
So the Chargers are kind of doing what I thought they were going to do. Obviously, they were so negative in money that they had to restructure a couple contracts and decide who they were going to get rid of. So they restructured Khalil Mack's contract. They restructured Joey Bosa's contract. So those two guys will be a part of the team next year. But unfortunately for them, good for us, they
Yep.
had to let Keenan Allen go, and they also let wide receiver Mike Williams go. So I don't know really. I'm not really sure what they're going to do. They need running backs. This is a team that could definitely be looking to trade back in the draft. I don't think that they really stay put at 5. This team needs a lot of, they got a lot of holes on their offense and defense, especially at wide receiver, running back. So if I had to guess, this is a team that will trade back in the draft, get a good haul, and try to build their roster that way. But yeah, Jim Harbaugh really took over a team that was in cap hell.
Yeah, that's true. I forget that they were in that cap hell. So, yeah, we'll see
Yep.
what they do in the draft, and I definitely think that they will. They should still be a pretty competitive team, I would imagine, next season.
Yeah, I totally think so too. But who is your winner in the AFC?
And my winner for the AFC, I just have to give it to the Houston Texans. So
Yes,
just what they're
yes,
doing down there, bringing in Hunter, bringing in Mixon, bringing in Akuda, re-signing Dalton Schultz. I've really liked what they're doing, and their trajectory is continuing to rise. So I think they're kind of moving their way into a Super Bowl contender for next season.
Yep, the Texans were my winner too. I couldn't agree with you more. Obviously, they won that division last year with 10 wins, won a playoff game, but this offseason they improved their roster even more. And I really anticipate them being one of the last teams standing in the AFC when it's all said and done this upcoming season.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that wraps up our free agency moves thus far around the NFL, and now we're gonna dive right into that experiment that we talked about. So Zach is gonna be taking the odds. I'll be taking the evens, and then we'll take our perspective team. So I'll be picking for the Vikings. Zach will be picking for the Raiders. There'll be no trades in this mock. We'll just pick it 1 through 23 and just see what happens with those two picks for the Vikings and see who the Raiders can get to. So, Zach, the Chicago Bears are on the clock. Who are you going to be taking here?
All right, with the number one pick in the 2024 NFL draft, the Chicago Bears are taking Caleb Williams. Absolute no-brainer. I feel like this guy's not even getting talked about enough. I feel like it's always people are talking about Drake May, JJ McCarthy, talking about teams trading up. Well, Caleb Williams, the best quarterback prospect I've ever seen. Even if you take the scrambling ability away and his ability to throw outside of the pocket, I feel like he can be an absolute top 10 quarterback in the NFL just inside the pocket. So, home run for the Bears. They got a lot of weapons. I think Caleb Williams is going to be one hell of a pro quarterback.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, yeah, moving on to the second pick. So the Washington Commanders are on the clock. And in the 2024 NFL draft, the Washington Commanders select quarterback Jaden Daniels out of LSU. So Jaden Daniels definitely will fit that Cliff Kingsbury offense well. And, I think, yeah, he's going to be a very nice quarterback there for Washington. So,
All right, so moving on to pick number 3, the New England Patriots. If I were them, I'd trade back. We're not doing trades in this mock here, so I'm going to stay put and take Drake May, quarterback, North Carolina. This pick really scares me because they have to let him sit for a year. They have to.
yeah.
You got Jacoby Brissett. You have no weapons. I think your offensive line is a little shaky right now. Please let Drake May sit. Don't rush him into it. Don't ruin his career like you ruined Mac Jones's career. Be patient with it. Yeah, I'm taking Drake May with the 3rd overall pick.
All right. With the 4th pick, the Arizona Cardinals select Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver at Ohio State. So they've lost Rondell Moore now, and now they lost Hollywood Brown. So I think this is a no-brainer. If Arizona stays there at 4, they get the best wide receiver in this class, and they just pair him nicely or give him to Kyler Murray to work with.
Yeah, I love it. Pick number 5, the Chargers. Like I said earlier, this is a big time trade back spot for teams. I do think the Chargers will eventually trade back out of the spot, but like I said, we're not doing trades. They lost wide receiver Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. I think they take the second best receiver on the board. That is Malik Neighbors, wide receiver LSU, and in my opinion, he's an Antonio Brown clone. So big time weapon for Justin Herbert.
Yeah. And, I'm sitting here with the 6th pick, the New York Giants, and I think they're pretty bummed out that they just lost on the potential chance of drafting Malik Neighbors, but they're going to go, and they're not even settling for this next guy, and that is Rome Odunze out of Washington. So put him in that offense, give Daniel Jones another weapon to work with, and, yeah, just see what he can do. So these top 3 guys, they are special, and I think they're all going to be just fantastic wide receivers here at the next level.
Yep, all 3 of those guys should be superstar wide receivers. I don't see how they're not. Moving on to number 7, the Tennessee Titans. They got their receiver in Kelvin Ridley. That was a huge need for them. Last year in the first round, they took Peter Skorowski from North Carolina. He played left tackle and right tackle. So I'm going to hit that. I'm going to hit that spot again. I'm going to take Joe Alt, tackle out of Notre Dame. You got your 2 bookend tackles now for the next decade plus. There you go, Titans.
Yeah. Nice pick, nice pick. So moving on to the Atlanta Falcons. So I think this is going to be the spot where we'll see our first defensive player taken. So Atlanta's going to have the pick of all the defensive guys and whoever is their favorite. And I think the number one guy that makes most sense to me is they got to shore up their defensive line, and that's taking Dallas Turner, edge rusher out of Alabama.
Yep, and in my opinion, best pass rusher in this draft. Number 9, the Chicago Bears. Kind of bummed with that last pick, But I do think they go defensive end here opposite of Montez Sweat. I think they go Jared Verse
Yeah,
out of
nice
Florida
pick.
State. I think, the receivers taken care of, quarterbacks taken care of. Time to get a guy opposite of Montez Sweat. And Jared Verse is an absolute dog.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, moving on to the New York Jets. So, New York Jets have different possibilities that they could do. They could maybe use another defensive tackle to shore up with Quinnen Williams. They could maybe go tackle, and if they don't think Moses is going to be a serviceable starter at right tackle, they could go that direction. Or they could just sit here and take best available player, and that's Brock Bowers, to give another weapon to Aaron Rodgers. So, I think the number one thing, though, for the Jets going forward, they brought in Tyrone Smith. They locked that side down, and now they can go and they can lock down the other tackle position. That's taken Talise Fuaga, offensive tackle out of Oregon State.
Nice. Great pick. As a Raider fan, picking here at 13, really bummed. But next on the clock, Minnesota Vikings. Who are you
Oh,
taking?
yeah. So, here we go. This is our experiment, okay? So,
Yep.
like I said before, we have J.J. McCarthy sitting here. We have Michael Penix Jr. sitting here. I don't... Do you actually think Michael or JJ is going to slide all the way down to 11? That's my number one question, is if he's going to slide to number 11. But I'm just thinking, like, man, this is very tough, because you know what? I'm going to do something here, okay? I'm going to pass on a quarterback, and I'm going to see
Wow.
what happens, okay? So
Wow.
I'm going to go out here, and I'm going to take the biggest absolute dog in this draft, and that is Byron Murphy, defensive
Nice.
tackle out of Texas, to put him right in the middle of our defense.
Dang. That's a great pick. Great pick. I still think defensive tackles a need for you guys, and he's an absolute beast, man. So I do like that pick. Denver Bronco fans are doing handstands and backflips, and they are over the moon because JJ McCarthy is still on the board somehow at 12. Very, very raw quarterback. I think he should sit for a year or two in Denver. That's not going to be the case. He's going to go out there right away and play. He's got a big enough arm. Obviously, he can move. Sean Payton finally gets his franchise quarterback in Denver. And then pick 13, we got the Raiders on the clock, so I'm going to take this one also. We're going to pass on quarterback 2 here. I really like Michael Penix. I do think it's a little rich at 13 for Michael Penix. So I think our biggest need right now is either right tackle or corner. J.C. Latham is still on the board, but if I'm making this pick, I'm taking cornerback Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. 6 foot,
Nice.
190 pounds. He ran that 4.3. Athletic, just an absolute freak. We talked about him benching 21 reps of 225, so just an absolute beast. Has 2 really, really good seasons on tape, so he's not just a 1-year wonder. He's your quarterback 1 moving forward.
Very nice pick. Very nice pick. Well, yeah, so now I have the Saints on the clock, and this could be a spot where the Saints maybe could take a quarterback and let them sit there. But I think they're going to try to maximize the most of what they have out of Derek Carr, and they're going to be taking offensive tackle Fashanu out of Penn State.
Nice. Yeah, they would be very happy if a guy like that fell to them. There's no doubt about it. Pick 15, Indianapolis Colts. Yeah, they locked up Kenny Moore, but he's strictly a nickel cornerback. So they're still looking for that outside guy. So I'm going to take cornerback Tyrod Arnold, cornerback from Alabama. Someone could argue that he's the best cornerback in this draft. Played safety, played corner. Definitely has the versatility to play all over the field.
Yeah, that's a very solid pick for them. So moving on to the 16th pick, the Seattle Seahawks are on the clock. So, Seattle just went out and they traded for Sam Howell. So I think quarterback would maybe be off the board at this point. And looking at their needs, do they sit here and do they take maybe the best available player? Do they go that strategy? Or do they just continue to add to their edge department? I think that they could help their pass rush, and this guy just makes sense to me in Seattle, and that's taken Latu out of UCLA edge rusher.
Yeah, but I don't know what it is with him, but he just looks like a Seahawk to me. So
He
I do like
does,
that
he really
pick.
does, yeah.
Yeah, he just looks like a Seahawk. Number 17, Jacksonville Jaguars. We talked about them losing Calvin Ridley in free agency. I think this guy is a top 10 pick in most drafts, but because those top three receivers are so special, he falls a little bit, and that's wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, 6'4", 205 pounds, 4'3", 340. My opinion, the best deep ball threat in this entire draft class. Trevor Lawrence gets an absolute stud in Brian Thomas Jr.
Very nice pick. If I'm sitting here at the 18th pick now, and I'm going to be picking for the Cincinnati Bengals, and man, they would absolutely be over the moon because they're going to get the best available player at this draft and a position of need, and that's Brock Bowers, tight end out of Georgia. Give Joe Burrow another weapon in that offense. Jamar Chase, Brock Bowers, that would be pretty rich there in Cincinnati.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't even imagine that. God, that would be so nice. Joe Burrow would be loving that for sure.
For sure.
19th pick. The Rams are on the clock. I'm going to go ahead and take Johnny Newton here, defensive tackle. He looks to be like a day two guy looking in right now, but I think with a good pro day and with Aaron Donald retiring, this move just makes a lot of sense. He's kind of built like Aaron Donald, and he's a legit pass rusher from that nose tackle position. So I'm going to go Johnny Newton, defensive tackle.
Very nice. Moving on to the 20th pick. So we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, so Pittsburgh, they went out and I think a quarterback is now gone because they went out and traded for Fields. So do they look at the wide receiver position? They traded Deontay Johnson to Carolina. Do they look at shoring up the offensive line, adding to the offensive line, picking from this historic offensive line class? So I think they're going to continue to build the trenches because I always believe that's where you start when building a team. And, man, they're going to be taking J.C. Latham, tackle out of Alabama.
Dude, I love that pick. And the one thing is now the Miami Dolphins are absolutely upset at 21. They were really hoping that a guy like J.C. Latham was going to fall to them. They lost a guy like Robert Hunt in free agency to the Carolina Panthers on that $100 million deal. So what am I going to do here at 21? I am going to surprise a lot of people here, and I'm going to go cornerback Cooper DeJean from Iowa. He's a white corner. I do think that he's going to be able to work out on his pro day, which is going to help him out big time. He's very athletic, 7 interceptions the last 2 seasons. I think him, maybe opposite of Jalen Ramsey, would be a nice piece there in Miami.
Yeah, that would be a really solid signing for him. And, I don't know if he's going to fall this far. He might go a little higher, but we'll see what happens with him. So, well, the Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock. Could they bring in another weapon for Jalen Hurts? Could they go wide receiver here? Or do they add to the defense? They brought in Devin White at linebacker. And, one big need for them, I think, is that cornerback too. And I want to say that they're going to shore up. If this is the way the draft fell, I would be shoring up the cornerback position, and that is taking Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson.
Nice. I think that's probably their biggest need is corner. And, yeah, great pick. The rich get richer.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do here. We've got to that pick number 23 for the Minnesota Vikings. So, Zach, if you're the general manager, if you're Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, what are you doing here at this pick? Michael Penix is still on the board.
Yep. What I'm doing with the 23rd pick here, you got the best defensive player in the draft, or one of them, in Murphy. Now, this is where I'm getting my franchise quarterback, and I'm getting quarterback Michael Penix Jr. I think it's an absolute perfect fit. I personally think that he fits better than Drake May and JJ. Yes, he's more of a pocket quarterback, but if you give him time, and I think the Vikings have a good offensive line, that he will be able to dice up defenses left and right, especially with those receivers. I mean, he threw for almost 10,000 yards the last 2 seasons at Washington. So might be the best pure passer in this entire draft. I love Michael Penix a lot. I thought 13 was just a tad bit rich, but I think at 23, you get your guy, you get him for 5 years, you get that 5th-year option, and Vikings fans should be ecstatic. You get Murphy, Penix, and you get to keep next year's first-round pick. I love it.
So that's our experiment, seeing if he would go there. So obviously, this is based on our mock, and you'll see what happens in real life, if the Vikings don't choose to move up with the draft or move up in the draft to get maybe a guy like May or a guy like J.J. McCarthy. And, looking at this draft, man, I would be so pumped to have like you said, at Byron Murphy there, and then taking Penix at 23. So I was nervous there for a second because I thought you were going to take Penix at 13. Do you think the Raiders would pull the trigger on him at 13? Do you think those guys would take that chance? Or are they going to be waiting maybe in round 2 and would rather go with a guy like, Bo Nix, or one of your favorite guys in this draft, maybe in the 3rd or 4th round, that's Spencer Rattler?
God, I hope they don't get either of those guys, but I really don't. I don't think either of those guys are going to mount to anything in the NFL. But
Yeah.
I do think that Penix is a possibility at 13. But with our right tackle being such a need and having all those studs available, and we need a corner badly,
Mhm.
um, I just think that Michael Penix realistically is more of a trade back in option for the Raiders, trading
Mhm.
back into like pick 25 and after if Penix falls that far.
Yep.
So I don't think that I don't know. I personally it's just so hard, dude, because I love
Yeah, I
Michael
know.
Penix. I love Michael Penix, and after him, I think there's just a massive drop off at quarterback.
Mhm.
And I don't know if I really feel comfortable starting Minshew for a whole year. So I just hope we find a
Yeah.
way to trade back into that first round to get Penix. But like I said, with right tackle being such a need and cornerback being such a need, I think that the Raiders will probably uh stay away from Penix at 13, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, well, this was a fun experiment to see how this would play out. Not saying like this is how it's going to play out, but based on what we think, what would happen in the draft, after they make their selection at 11, and then obviously the Raiders make their selection at 13. So yeah, this was fun. We'll have to maybe do this again. We'll be doing a full first round mocks here. We'll probably do one maybe in a couple of weeks once there's more signings in free agency, and just give a few weeks to see if the Vikings do move up to, acquire a higher pick in the draft. So, just like Zach said earlier in the episode, Vikes fans, think on it. Would you rather move up to, say, 3 and 4 and get a guy like Drake May, or get a guy like JJ McCarthy, or potentially sit there at 11, get a stud defensive tackle, and then potentially get a guy like Michael Penix there at 23, and you're able to keep your first round future picks too. So yeah, I think this was a fun experiment, and it's interesting how it played out.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that when it's all said and done, I think this is going to be the craziest top 10 draft that we've seen in a very long time. I'm anticipating a lot of trades going down.
Yeah, I think so too, and we'll see what happens here in the coming weeks leading up to the draft. So
Yeah, and then just one more thing before we get off here. I just want to name the top 10 available free agents still, according to US Today. Number 1, Justin Simmons, safety from the Broncos. Number 2, Mike Williams, wide receiver from the Chargers. We still have Chase Young from the 49ers on the board, Stephon Gilmore from the Cowboys, Jadeveon Clowney from the Ravens, Quandre Diggs from the Seahawks, Jamal Adams from the Seahawks, Xavier Howard, Tre'Davious White, offensive tackle Trent Brown, Calais Campbell, Adoree Jackson. So there's still a ton of great free agents left on the board. So next time we talk to you guys, hopefully a lot of these guys are on new teams. But until then, just win, baby.
Skull Vikes, thank you for listening to our episode. Be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and X at Naptime Sports Talk Podcast for content related to the pod. Thank you for the support.